So, hi guys, welcome to the first episode of the Scottish MMA podcast. I'm Martin Hamilton. I'm joined today by higher level head coach James Doolan. How you doing, James?
I'm good, mate. I'm good.
So James, we'll kind of start off hearing a little bit about you and higher level and how you get started. So, if you just want to tell us a wee bit about yourself, a bit about the gym and how the gym actually started.
Christ. So, um, well, I started martial arts at 8. I'm 44 now. I started like karate, local karate club, and then just moved through different styles, progressing it like away from traditional styles into like more full contact based stuff, like boxing, Thai boxing, and kickboxing, and then when MMA kind of came about 1993, 94. Started looking for, started playing a wee bit with it. Started jiu-jitsu like the year 2000, I think, with Scott McVeigh as a blue belt under hoist at the time in Glasgow. There, I met Paul McVeigh, who had already had a couple MMA fights, no holds barred fights type of thing. And that's pretty much how we got into it for there. So basically, since late 1999, I've been in MMA. I moved away for Thai boxing, which I've been competing in. I'd already been teaching. I started coaching about 17, 18 with my kickboxing instructor. I knew I was going to get into coaching anyway, but so it's pretty much it. The gym came about where I started coaching like a wee group of guys through in Carstairs Village. And eventually we started getting a bit of a reputation and moved to Lanark, where we started like a Lanark MMA team. I was still going to Glasgow 5 times a week to train with Paul McVeigh and stuff. This was like we were using Cali Uni a lot. We were using a couple of gyms in Milton and stuff like that, just training at different places. I was also got to Dumbarton to train at, which is now the D unit, with John Nicholson. And we just kind of started a fight team for there. The Glasgow guys ended up opening the grip house. The Dumbarton guys ended up opening the move for the Marine Craft to the D unit there. And I ended up moving to Lanark 2012 to Whitburn, and rebranded Lanark MMA to higher level martial arts. At that time, I had already had like 4 or 5 guys doing pretty well in Cage Warriors and stuff. And it's just kind of grew for there. We were in like a wee, I think our first gym was at 11,000 square feet. And then 2018, we moved to the unit that we're in now, which is like 5,000 square feet, 250 square meters of mat space, full size cage, whatever else. So that's pretty much how it grew. But the gym itself is basically the last of the kind of Dinky Ninja fight team, because the rest of the guys that started that team was, and we had a lot of success with that team. I've kind of moved on to other things. Most of them are just doing jiu-jitsu now, and some of them are the training and stuff anymore. But I made a conscious effort just to push into MMA because I was still competing up to 2013, and I could see the sport starting to grow a wee bit.
Yeah, 'cause you made a good point there. Like you were talking about like the Dinky Ninja fight team, and that was like the combination of the three gyms that you mentioned there, like yourselves, the Grip House, and the D Unit. But that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. How important was that? See, especially in the beginning, to have like a team of people, especially in Scotland, where things were so niche, and like you guys were finding every like because that you said the point about MMA only really came about in the early 90s. So there wasn't really like guys before yous that yous could learn from. So like the guys now, they have yous and they have what the experiences that yous went through with the Dinky Ninjas. How important was that for yous with growing that brand, just to have the team of people with different expertise, different styles, etc., to grow into being so successful?
It was massive. It was basically just a skill exchange to start with. When I first met Paul, I'd already been Thai boxing and kickboxing, I actually had an amateur MMA. Well, I entered like an 8-man tournament thing with no headshots and stuff like that, which one match, which was mental. It's like a clash of styles thing. And I think Paul had already had a couple of fights by the time I met him, but it basically started off where I would coach Paul stand up, McVeigh. I'd do his pads and stuff like that, and then he would teach me grappling. He was already a black belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu at that point. He was miles ahead of me in terms of he was a grappling guy. He was an exceptionally good wrestler even back then. He was massively into like Japanese MMA, like Shuto and stuff like that. So he was watching guys that nobody else hears now, like Ramino Sato and Caruno and stuff like that. Guys that that went on to the UFC eventually. Paul was already like submerged in this. So it started like that. We ended up getting mats in Paul's. He was at Glasgow Uni at the time doing his degree, getting mats in his house. And the days I got in Glasgow, we'd train at a gym, then train at his house, and then go to a class at night and stuff like that. And then eventually we'd met John and ended up going through to Dumbarton. And again, John wasn't the same as us, and we were like black belts in traditional martial arts, moving into MMA. John was just like an athletic guy who liked to fight and was very good at it. So even what John brought to the table complemented us. Do you know what I mean? He's very good with the strength conditioning stuff. He was just a guy that, like, if you're going to, if we're travelling down south for a fight or whatever, it was always good having John Way. So the three is, I think, just the combination of the three has made a good blend because we're completely different. We're completely different kind of backgrounds, and personality-wise, we're not the same. But it just worked, and then we all ended up with good student groups underneath us, and we ended up with like a very, very strong team just for guys coming through the three gyms. And it was easy at the time because it was just you and your mates training. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like it is now for me, especially now. It's a proper business. Guys are getting paid a lot of money, and there's more on the line at the time. We were just like training our mates and travel about and fight.
But that, like you said as well about it becoming a business, but it seems that your gym still has like that kind of same philosophy that you had back then. That you try and make it like that kind of family vibe where it is like training with your mates. But you also still incorporate a lot of people from a lot of different areas of the country and beyond, because like we spoke about in our last interview, like you guys have opened up dorms in higher level, which allows you to get fighters for England, Albania, Serbia, like guys for all over. So you still kind of have that almost an open door policy.
I've always been conscious of keeping that kind of team mentality. A lot of the rest of our team kind of splintered away. Like the Dinky Ninja thing kind of fell away when McVeigh left. He had his run on tough. He was 2-weight champion at Cage Warriors and stuff like that. And eventually he's like, I'm going to have to settle down and have kids. His wife's a doctor, do you know what I mean? He's like, can't keep doing this forever type of thing. I'll keep doing jiu-jitsu and similar with John. And then when they guys, like, when their time is up with MMA, they could walk away and go and do jiu-jitsu and stuff. But I was very conscious of keeping all the stuff that I liked and enjoyed for the Dinky Ninjas and making sure it was like a core element at a higher level. So it is very much a team. And everybody looks out for each other. And it's not even just the fighters there. It's grown into. It's almost like a wee community where there's guys that in the gym will never fight, but if they need anything, there's a bunch of guys there for them. There's guys that are always checking in on making sure everybody's all right for all ages, kids right through to adults and stuff like that. And I think I've seen what happened with a bunch of other gyms, like what splinters forming and how some of these gyms went from being very successful to pretty mediocre and stuff like that. And it was just because I sit back and just watch. I'm good at observing what's happening with these things. I just sit back and pay attention, and I just make sure anything that could compromise what we've built at a higher level, anything that gets in the way, could compromise it, I can nip it in the bud really early. Do you know what I mean? So I know what happened at some of the other gyms happened at my gym.
So like, obviously, without getting into specifics, but your gym has built that kind of popularity. Like you have fighters in the UFC, you have fighters in One, Bellator, EFC, Arius, like all the big organisations. Do you ever have that kind of worry that there'll be individuals that come in to kind of just see what they can get from the gym without giving kind of anything back?
Yeah, you do. You'll never get them coming through the system that way because anybody who comes through the system at higher levels, they're pretty grounded straight away. Do you know what I mean? The mat's kind of humble you. You can't go on the mats thinking you're destined for big things or you're a superstar when there's guys there that you won't be able to touch until you're at a very good level. Do you know what I mean? And then you're coming in and you're seeing guys like Stevie who's done everything in the sport. And he doesn't act like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's you do get some people try to come through other gyms and they just don't last. They'll either not be able to keep up with the work ethic, or sometimes it could be a wee thing like their personality doesn't fit in, or they expect to get treated like a big deal. And again, you've not done anything in the sport. And the guys that we've got who have been very successful don't have an ego like that. It gets not beat out of you, but it gets took out of you in the gym just for working all the time and for losing rounds and whatever else. So you do get people thinking they can come and skip the queue, but there's a process in the gym where everybody's the same. Like for the guys fighting, like Stevie's last fight was for $1 million. Do you know what I mean? He's doing the same stuff as what some of our amateur guys are doing, and they're not getting paid. He's the same sessions, he's the same work ethic, the same setup, like the same get feedback, go away, work on it, let's fix this, boom, and stuff like that. So you do get people thinking they can just turn up here and maybe skip the queue, but there's a conveyor belt in that gym. Like if you going back to what we were saying earlier, you had guys in Cage Warriors in 2002, like, and people never like go, I'm in Cage Warriors, like it's a big deal, and we're like, we were doing this in 2002. Paul was a two-weight champion there. John Quinn fought for the title there. Stevie's two-time champion there. Graham Turner's fought for the title there. Martin Delaney fought there. We had maybe 15 or 16 guys through Cage Warriors. So it's just a conveyor belt. Like, guys will go away. Like Martin Delaney goes to the Ultimate Fighter, doesn't pan out, and then has to go have a family and run his business. So you lose him. But there's guys coming up all the time. You can see it in a way. Well, like young Sean Clancy and stuff like that. He's 20-year-old and he's just about to turn pro, and the stuff he's doing at 20-year-old surpasses what any other pro guys done. The guys that were world champions, the guys even like Stevie, what he done in the UFC and stuff like that. Like, but these kids are going to surpass what we've done before. So the conveyor belt there just keeps spawning people out. Do you know what I mean? And there's plenty of gyms where you get one or maybe two good guys coming out at a period of time. But it's just a numbers thing. Like if you've got 100 students, chances of one of them being no bad at MMA is quite high. It will probably happen, even in spite of what you're doing. But the numbers that we're producing, there's not many other gyms in the whole of the UK can produce those numbers at a period of time the same way we have.
Because that's the thing as well, and what you're saying there, it's dead important, and it's dead. But having those guys round about the gym and having those kind of personalities, like guys like Stevie Ray, but guys that have been there and done it all in this. You're saying that about Sean Clancy as well, that he's now doing things that these fighters aren't. But then without these guys being there, the foundations potentially weren't laid. And like Sean Clancy, like he's came up through the ranks, so he's been witnessing this from like obviously a very young age, and he gets it, and he gets all the positive information for you guys as well as the negatives, whereas the guys before that didn't really have that. If this makes sense, because it was going back to what I was saying earlier about the sport being so young that your amateurs now, like they have all the positives of the gym without kind of experiencing the same negatives you guys went through. Like for example, like things about diet, like how but that's all very honed in now. So they get all that information firsthand, and it's all positive. Like some of the mistakes round about potential matchmaking back in the day, like as coaches and gyms evolve, they learn from mistakes. So the guys coming up now, they get a kind of not a sheltered view because that's completely unfair. I think the level at MMA has risen so much, but it's a lot more information they're getting for a young age, which is so important.
It's just it's through a couple of things. There's like an exponential learning thing there. So these young guys are learning on the experience of the guys that went before them. Obviously learning for the mistakes they made as much as everything that they've done right. Like anything that's tried and tested, they're getting the benefit of that. Anything that's went wrong, they're getting the benefit of that. Whereas when we were figuring it out back in like 2000 and stuff like that, it was, you were going into fights. We were doing Thai boxing one night and then jiu-jitsu the next night, and still training in the gi and just stuff like that. No putting stuff together well, and there was no system in place. We just thought if you train hard and turn up, we'll be fine. To the point now where we can take guys now in a year and a half to 2 years and turn them into like they're better, well-rounded fighters than what we would have been with 5 or 6, 7 years of pro experience back then. There's also a lot more obviously experts to learn from us. We've progressed up through the ranks. We've got like a support network of guys running about us, so we've been fortunate enough to work with like Mike Dolce with the diet stuff, with Lockhart and stuff like that as well. And then the strength conditioning guys that we're working with now are probably the best guys we've ever worked with. It's just stuff like that. Like obviously, as the sport grows and more money gets put into it, the level of professionalism is going to grow. Like more of these guys are going to be attracted to it. Should in theory attract better athletes because it gives them another out instead of going to a more conventional sport. They could go to MMA. I think you're maybe starting to see that now, where a lot of young lads are want to go to an MMA gym instead of boxing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like kind of what you're saying as well, it's also like how society has advanced, like the amount of information you can get now at the touch of a screen. Like I know so much is made out of how negative technology can be, but all the information that you could ever need to a degree about learning elements of martial arts, you can learn a lot of that from online. So it's a lot easier to gain information both as a coach and as a fighter because you hear the stories about kind of back in the day. It used to be like you'd have to have a subscription to 990 kind of different martial arts magazines to extract bits of information, whereas now all that stuff's online and it's ready for both coach and student.
Aye, it's a completely different world now. I can remember having to buy like grappling magazines, stuff like that, and try and copy techniques you're seeing for that. And then even with Black Belt magazine, you used to be able to buy first a bunch of instructions were on VHS, but you had to send away from them. And sometimes you were getting them in formats that you couldn't play on certain videos, like VCRs and shit like that. But you're waiting months and months for them. Do you know what I mean? And then they came and the stuff wasn't always great either, but it was a start. And then obviously with the sports risen pretty much parallel at the same time as the internet. So you can see the parallels as MMA has grew. The internet's been a massive influence on the growth of MMA. Even back in the day through like forums and stuff like that, just people talking shit about it and stuff like that. And then streaming it and stuff, anything like that. But the information thing's a bit of a blessing and a curse now because there's so much information out there. And not all of it's brilliant. There's for the great stuff that there is available there, and there is some absolute gold there. There is also a lot of rubbish. And you will get guys coming in and they've bought bear and bow DVDs and they don't know how to pass guard, but they're fucking inverting and bear and bow people and sweeping them. Del Hiva guard and stuff like that. And it's a brilliant thing if it's used well. Do you know what I mean? And it'll obviously never replace training, but it's a great resource. And then at the same time, you're seeing these guys not getting any better and turning up for fights at certain shows and they've not got a clue, and you're like, you're in this period where there's more knowledge and information available than any other time in history. And all you have to do is put the right fucking words in a search bar and find it. And you're either too stupid or too lazy to do it. So you're turning up underprepared for something like this. Where there's a lot of good stuff out there, man, but there's some people abuse it, or they're not smart enough to know what they're looking at. And then you've got the flip side of that, where you've got coaches and all they're doing is regurgitating shit they've seen on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? And it's not designed to the group they're working with. It's that's a cool move, I'll teach that, and nothing systemised or anything like that. It's just the in fashion thing. Whereas coaching has to be a wee bit more than that. Do you know what I mean? It has to be split up into. You're obviously coaching groups and stuff like that, but if you're coaching fighters, you're coaching performance there, and not everybody's the same. So the first thing you need to get a handle on with that is recognising what you've got and what you're working with as a coach, and then what direction you're taking that person's game in, and why are you taking in that direction and stuff like that. And class environment's not always the best way to go doing that.
No, because I think you hit the nail on the head. I think as good as the internet can be, I think there is a kind of everyone is an expert sort of thing as well. Because you even see that with guys at the highest level of the sport, like Liam Harrison. Like he does a lot of instructionals he does it on Instagram, and he's got his own website and stuff. And he actually has to now put the video of what he's demonstrating along with it actually working in a fight. Because if they kept just commenting on his stuff, that wouldn't work. But this would never work in a fight. That would never work in a fight. And obviously, like Liam Harrison, like this is an extreme example, but Liam Harrison is like one of the best Thai fighters the UK has ever produced. And just that level of everybody else thinking they're an expert because they've seen something on the internet that they're now kind of like trolling.
Aye, and Liam's site's excellent as well. I'm pretty sure I gave him the idea to do that online thing. I mean, Dwayne Ludwig was doing it and I messaged him. It was after he'd done a seminar up here. I messaged him and I was like, you really need to do this before someone else does it. He's an exceptional coach, Liam. As great a fighter is, a very, very good coach as well. And what you're saying is right. If he tells you in about Thai boxing, you don't need to, you take it as gospel. The guy's the best non-Thai fighter. One of the best non-Thai fighters in history. He's definitely the best guy to come out of the UK. They always kind of talk about him and maybe Ronnie Green for back in the day, but Liam for me is a bit better. And then you still see him and like Damien Traynor and stuff like that arguing with guys about like technique. You know, the guys are sitting on the couch. You know what I mean? It's just the way the internet is.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously at a higher level, it's so well known for having, like we were saying earlier, the pros that have fought all over the world and fought in the biggest shows. But you have also demonstrated in 2022 the level of your amateurs, and there is no better showcase for that than the Four Nations tournament, because we've seen the likes of Paul Lally get a gold medal down there, Kunle getting a gold medal. Sean Clancy got a bronze going a weight division up, and then you Logan McGonigal as well getting a silver. Like, what was that experience like to go and coach at something like this?
It was good, man. We're obviously keen to do more of it. We've been looking into setting up a Scottish team for a while. Mark Goddard came to Glasgow 2017, I think, and met with me, Ian Feenan and Kieran Malone, and told us basically you need to start the Scottish Federation, get this Scottish team started. And we were kind of in the process of it before COVID just shut everything down. So there's a lot of benefits there, man. Like, our athletes loved it. Like, couldn't we got to fight 3 times in 3 days? And before that, it was something, because of the lack of shows up here, especially, and we also have trouble getting our guys matched. He's taken a year to get 3 fights, you know what I mean, where he could just rattle these out quick. It was good. It was good. I think the Four Nations are coming back in May, so we're going to send a bunch of guys down again to that. we should have more this time. I think the last time we sent maybe 6 or 7, but we should have more. But it's something we want to get involved with. If the Scottish teams can get together and no bitch about it, they could easily have a Scottish Championships like it, very similar, which was an idea that was pitched. We'll get this Four Nations thing, and then Kunle was going to go to the European and the Worlds, but it's no cheaper. I think he was looking at about $2,000 to go, and then they want coaches to pay separate, coaches to pay to enter the building to coach on the day and stuff like that. So Kunle just kind of was like, I'll just patch it. I think he ended up getting a fighting on top, and now he's getting ready to go and fight at Cage Warriors Academy in March. So it was a good experience, man. It's something we're definitely going to get involved with more. Obviously, I know a lot of amateur boxers who go away, and when you see these guys and you ask them what their fight record is, and they're like, oh, 100 fights, and they've been boxing for 5 years. It's because they can go to these tournaments every weekend and just rack up fights. You know what I mean? They can compete maybe every month and get 3 fights a month and stuff like that. So anything that gets us experience and gets us exposed to competing against different styles is always going to be something that we're going to go towards.
Because that's the thing as well. It's important that you to get these fights and get the kind of repetition, especially at amateur, to learn. But the thing that was like best that I felt about the Four Nations was the level of opposition, and that's where you really got to see people's game, like guys' games rise, because you seen the likes of Kunle, like he went and beat Teddy Stringer, who's one of the best. He was one of the best prospects in the whole United Kingdom. So just getting that kind of level of opponent is phenomenal.
Yeah, our amateur guys can compete with any. There's always beaten British, and they're fighting. You've seen it with Sean. Sean's had to fight numerous kind of Scandinavians just to get matches. You usually gain away age and stuff like that. But our amateur system is very strong, man. And they're always going to do pretty well. So hopefully they get more opportunities. I know we're looking at turning some of those amateurs pro this year, 2 at the start and 2 later on. And like what I said about this conveyor belt, there'll be another crop of guys coming up through behind them who will hopefully go on and surpass what they guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that was one of the things as well. Like, we got to see Sean fight at a weight class above, and he looked amazing. I think the only fight he lost was against the Welsh boy who was like number 1 or number 2 ranked amateur in the whole United Kingdom. So is that something that we're going to see him going forward, because he is so young and he's still developing? Was that just a bit of a trial of what he'll be like at middleweight?
All our guys moved up a weight class for that, obviously, because you have to weigh in every day. So Sean could have made the 77 probably once, but making it like 3 days in a row wasn't going to be great for him. So he's moved up. He also moved up an age bracket because Sean was still only 19 there, so he should have been in the under 21s. I think he moved up into the adults. And I think if he hadn't drawn the kid that beat him, Ron Coppler, I think for Shores MMA, he's very, very good. If he hadn't drawn him the first day, I wasn't at the fights on the first day. I just wanted to take Kerry, so I'd sent Kieran Reid down, and so I missed like Kunle beating Teddy Stringer. I spoke to him and stuff like that, but that was the first time I've not been in Sean's corner, and I think what's happened is he's dropped that kid, went down on top of him, get swept, and then invested a wee bit of time going after a buggy choke. So it's daft things, just decision making. But again, it was a very close fight, and he's desperate for a rematch. But it's good learning, because I've been telling him for ages about that buggy choke. I don't like it. It's fine when it works. It went viral when it worked the last time, but I don't want them underneath people, especially when they're always to elbow you in the head. So I think if I'd been there, that wouldn't have happened. But again, what a learning experience for him. Do you know what I mean? Because this is something he'll get away with that in the gym all the time, because he's so good at it. This kid had seen him hit it before, so was prepared for it as well, and just kind of gutted it out. And those better amateur guys are similar to the pros. They're tougher. The submission has to be absolutely perfect for them to tap tape. So this kid's been in it, said it was deep, and he was also hurt with the punch that Sean dropped him with, and just got it out. So it's learning experience for him. Also means he's got that kind of monkey off his back. I don't want them to need me to be in the corner for every fight. Do you know what I mean? That's a flawed system there where they're relying on me being there, because basically if I have to talk during a fight, something's not right, I want to send them in and just let them do their work. And then the only time I talk to a son or a son's on the verge of maybe going wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, like your amateurs, they had great experiences there, and I completely agree with what you were saying about like Scotland getting their own team and looking to get their own federation, because that's something that we are severely lacking. And you even seen it a couple of, like 2 years ago now, where when Jimmy McCallum went to the IMAF, like he had to go through the English circuit and stuff like that, and it just seems so unfair, because although like, the price is a huge barrier, and I'm unsure how you would really get around that, but just kind of the opportunity for these athletes to go on and compete at these shows, that you've seen the benefit that it's having. So it seems a bit alien that Scotland don't have are still like that wee bit, that couple of steps behind.
Aye, Shannon Trout done it the year before. She got a silver medal representing England. The thing is, if they don't get up to speed with it and start putting people into these events, the rest of them will leave us behind. And the whole thing with IMAF is it's pushing for Olympic recognition. You know what I mean? And so that if you're an amateur athlete, you want to be at the Olympic Games. There's no higher kind of standard in any sport at amateur level than being at the Olympics. And we don't want to be watching guys that we can beat go to the Olympics. Like Callum Murray fought a kid at his last amateur fight, I think it was. He fought a guy for Iceland who had won a silver medal at the Europeans. IMAS, and Callum's beat him. You've seen Scott Malone at Cage Warriors fought that kid Cedar Atlas, who had won the European IMAS twice, 2 years in a row. Was 6-0 as a pro, but these guys are getting signed to the bigger organisations because of the strength of the IMAF background. You see it with Mokayev. He's like the most kind of touted or approached pro debut fight in history. Because everybody's like, this kid's 21-0 at IMAF. And that's going to continue. If you watch the UFC and pay attention, there's a lot of guys you'll see even coming up on the wee screen just saying like IMAF champion and stuff like that. So it obviously holds a wee bit of weight. And it should. It's the same as when Olympic boxing or world boxing champions turn pro. If they've got that amateur pedigree, they maybe get to the bigger cards quicker, they'll get paid quicker, they'll pay a bit more quicker and stuff like that. So if we don't get involved with it, it will leave us behind, because when you see it with the strength of the Irish team, they're going away, and I think the only team that's maybe beaten them is like the Russians. Do you know what I mean? At these major events, they're maybe just outnumbered by these guys, but for a small country, Ireland's always come in the top 3 in the world at IMAF, and their setup's just far superior to what we've got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Like the things that the Irish team are doing are phenomenal, and you're even seeing a lot of the kind of like the kind of like the Arabic countries, like
Yeah.
Bahrain and stuff like that. Like the level of athletes they were putting out at the IMAF was ridiculous, and for countries that you aren't really seeing having their full influence on on like the likes of UFC, Bellator, etc. So this could be a wave that's just coming, and it does. It's like you're saying, if Scotland don't kind of get on level with it, they will get you will get left behind, and it's unfair.
It's not an even playing field if they don't get involved, especially if it does eventually end up in the Olympics.
It's the level of competition as well, and that's the thing as well. Like, it's something that your gym's really good at, and it was like the best example I can think of it was when Mark Ewan fought Michael Blair in his first professional fight. That you guys go and seek out the hard fights, so when your guys make it to the big show, they don't wilt under the pressure. Like they've experienced everything. They've fought high level guys. So like the likes of IMAF, like that is the best amateurs in the world competing against the best amateurs in the world. So like you were saying earlier, like, a lot of these amateurs they aren't very. they are like technique wise, they're not very fun. Like they could beat a lot of pros. They're just being a bit more strategic and getting the reps in amateur because obviously the amateur record disappears, whereas your pro kind of stays your pro. But it's just kind of getting that repetition for these young guys.
It's just experience, man. We were fortunate enough with guys like Mark, who you mentioned, he had 15 amateur fights, and even his last 5 amateur fights, they were all pro level fights. He was fighting very good guys with big records, and he's just carried that on when he's turned pro, and you can see making the decisions. He's crossed over with pro, and it doesn't look like he's made a step up yet. He's 4-0 now. He had the Michael Blair fight, and Michael was probably the best prospect in the country that way outside the mark. And without being disrespectful, it wasn't a competitive. Mark just had a look at him and then took him out. And then his second fight, he's ended up with Tom Mullen, who's exceptional. The three brothers are excellent. Tom's a 6'2" lightweight. I think Tom's some trouble getting fights. He had a big amateur record that everybody in the business knows. The Mullen brothers, do you know what I mean? And Mark and Tom's had to fight each other, like 2 fights deep, and it's again testament to these kids that are taking their fights, because the amount of people turning down fights, and I can speak for Tom as well. The amount of people turning down fights for the guys is unbelievable. Mark, I could show you messages for Cage Wars and everything else where anytime they've asked for a 70-kilo guy for these so-called guys that can't get matched, I message and say Mark Ewan will do it. They'll just message back and say they won't take Mark Ewan. Or if I message saying who's the 70, they'll say they won't take Ewan. Do you know what I mean? It's the same guys that are on social media saying that nobody will fight them and stuff like that. But it bridges the gap. If you get that level of amateur fights, it'll bridge the gap to pro much better. Do you know what I mean? And then you'll no need to go about as a pro padding your record, try to take easy fights to get to the big show and then get found out on the big show. You can get to the big show and you can do what Stevie's done. You can have a living. You go 4 contracts deep there, start making money, and then you can leave and go to another big show or whatever and have opportunities in Polaris and stuff like the way Stevie is. And it's just because you didn't miss any step. You don't look for easy fights, and you can make that jump to pro a wee bit easier by taking as many and as hard a fight amateur as possible.
And I think that's been one of the great things about Mark Ewan as well, is that he's not afraid to go into someone's backyard, because you seen that when he fought Mikey Blair. He fought him at Holytown Havoc, which was a hometown show. It was a very pro Michael Blair crowd, and he's went to France, he's went to areas, and he's fought French guys in their own backyard as well. So he's gone out and he's seeking these fights, and that's all you really can do.
That's just a confidence for the work he's done. Do you know what I mean? He's fully aware of everything that he asked him to do. He does it. He lives the life outside. He's not one of these guys. I wish he was a wee bit more vocal on social media and stuff, Mark, because he's not like a big social media guy. But when you hear him speak about fighting and stuff like that, he's got a very unique mindset. But he's confident about fighting anybody. Like Mark will win fights in the UFC right now. But no doubt about it. I've seen guys who have won fights in the UFC spar with him, and I know what he can do to them. And he's better on the night, Mark, as well. He's not one of these superstars in the gym. He's one of these guys who just have a look at you in the gym and he's got your number. And then on fight night, he's a different proposition altogether. He's hard to deal with. He's very smart, but he's just one of these guys. Again, he puts in the work. He doesn't half-arse anything. Any wee extra thing that he can do to make himself better, he'll do it. He wants his hard fights. Like again, he went for Tom Mullen he went to Africa and fought in the UFC. Do you know what I mean? And he's not had a fight. I think that Michael Blair was 0-0 at the time when they fought, but Tom had a winning record. The African kid had a winning record. Then the kid he just fought, who's French, Russian, had a big winning record. He's been a bit like one of our other coaches had trained with him at Jackson's 2017. He's been there. He's been at AKA, and He's at that Spirit Dojo in Germany and stuff like that. So he's been about the best gyms in the world. This kid, and Mark's like that. I'll have him. And Mark, I've told you what he was going to do. That guy, in fact, he told a lot of people exactly how that fight was going to go. Pretty much down to how it would finish and run about the time and the place. Pretty much the exact location in the cage it was going to finish. The only thing he never said was the shot, but he's got that confidence through the work that he's done. And just going back to what we've already spoke about, he knows that he's running about guys like Stevie, who's his main training partner, who's beat Anthony Pettis, he's beat Joe Lozon, he's beat Michael Johnson, he's beat Ross Pearson, he's two-weight champion at Cage Warriors, he's Bama champion. He knows that he's learning off of these guys, and there's another 5 or 6 pro lightweights in the gym. There's another 3 or 4 featherweights there in the gym, and then you can see these young guys at his heels coming up behind him. Mark's like 21, 22, but he sees like these Stephen Clancy's and that coming up behind him, and just keep him on his toes.
He's got a very fan friendly style as well. Like his movement in the cage is phenomenal, and it's the way he sets shots up. Like his fakes. You seen that in his last fight. Like that Russian boy was so experienced, but he was biting on everything that Mark was throwing, and that's what set up the final combination, because he was able to get a couple in on a couple of feints to set up the winning combination, and just watching it, you're like, wow, this was so impressive to see. Just his movement, his feinting, it was so impressive.
That's all by design as well. Like nothing he's doing is a fluke. Everything's has been tailored towards what he's good at and what comes very natural to him. And he's doing stuff that no other fighter that we've had in this country is capable of doing. Nobody's shown what he can show yet, and he's only shown a fraction as well. There's a lot more to come. And the other thing is, he's not one dimensional. Do you know what I mean? He's went out to South Africa and he dashed that kid there. He's got multiple ways to win, which is, again, you can produce guys that are very good at certain things, but the real kind of challenge is making them well-rounded, so they're dangerous everywhere. So they've got, I can fight this way, and if it doesn't work, I can fall back and fight this way, or I can adapt on the moment, in between rounds, whatever I need to, and find ways to win. I've got multiple processes to victory, and then doing it a large period of time with multiple different guys. Like again, there's gyms. Sometimes we get offered a fighter for a gym, and you know straight away, well, that's going to be a wrestler for that gym. Do you know what I mean? That's going to be somebody who likes to do this as a bottom player. They're good punchers out of that gym and stuff like that. So it's like you can't, to be a really good gym, you can't get labelled. It needs to be, they're dangerous everywhere. Every one of their fighters has got a completely different style, effective style. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they can all fight different, but they can't fight well type of thing. Like they're all winning different ways, and you can see that with what we're doing with the balance between knockouts and submissions is pretty 50-50. So guys are subbing people or they're knocking them out and stuff like that at every level. Day one amateurs right through to PFL and UFC and stuff like that.
This is one of the things I was wanting to ask you as well. Like his name's come up a lot in our interviews, and it's about Stevie Ray and just that whole kind of redemption story. Like he put a very heartwarming post up on social media about how, like, when the UFC cut him, he took it sounded like he took it quite bad. So just to see for that, to get into the PFL and having that amazing run that he had in the PFL, like the submission he got against Anthony Pettis was phenomenal. Like it was so impressive, and it was one of those submissions. It seemed that it was shared the whole world. Like, he even had Joe Rogan talking about it on his podcast. So can you just sum up what was that? What was that experience like to go? Because Stevie's the only, to my knowledge, he was the only Scottish person. He was the first ever Scottish person signed to the PFL. I know Louis Sutherland has been involved with them, and he he flies the Scottish flag. I know he was born in London, but he flies the Scottish flag. So what was that whole experience like? Because you're like the only coaches in Scotland that have went through it.
It was good, man. The bit with Stevie, the retirement, he probably took that worse than me. Do you know what I mean? I would have been quite happy if he retired after beating Michael Johnson, because he had some injuries and stuff like that, but nothing that was kind of like affecting his day to day life. He could still move, he could still play with his kids, he could still work, and shit like that. A lot of guys come out the sport with a lot less and a lot more damage than what he would have if he'd come out the sport at that point in time. He obviously felt a wee bit hard done by the UFC cutting him off that win and stuff like that. And rightly so, because it was a big win. But he took a bit of time off, and then when he came back and started training, we knew he was going to get signed somewhere. I think Bellator actually made him an offer and stuff like that, but PFL kind of gave him a better offer. And then obviously putting him straight into that tournament was a bit of an incentive. So it was cool just to get him back working. He had a bit of weight to shift and stuff like that, but his mind was good. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like a wee bit of a chip on his shoulder to say, I'll show these fuckers for cutting me. And it's quite a big motivator. That the first fight for me was the most important one, the Martinez one, because he had a 3-year layoff there. He'd obviously been battling with injuries and stuff like that. And we flew to that fight. I think it was in Dallas. And part of me was wondering what was going to happen, whereas I'd never had that before with him. I always knew he was there to fight. Part of me was like, what if he gets hit and just falls to bits, or what if he can't grapple, he can't scramble, and he gets in trouble. And Martinez was quite a hard first fight as well. He hadn't been stopped. He's a good fighter. And the fight was competitive, so straight away I was like, we've got something we can work with here. We can go back the ring rust away now. We can go back and get training, and we'll see who the gear is next. And then the good thing with the PFL was it was out again 8 weeks later. Do you know what I mean? So it's like we had the Martinez fight, we got home, we straight back to the gym, and then I think about 2 weeks in, they're like, right, you've got Anthony Pettis next, and they're like, fuck, that'll be cool. No hard fight to motivate yourself, or like you want to be fighting guys like him. He's a guy that everybody in the gym's fans of his. Like he's fun to watch. He's done some cool shit, and then there was some pressure on that fight because it was the second fight in the season. So Stevie needed a finish because Pettis already had 6 points. Stevie needed a finish within 12 and a half minutes. So we game planned pretty well for him, right to the point where that submission he hits. Pettis is very good at escaping the back a certain way, and Stevie's very good at that submission. So it kind of came off perfect. And then for there, we're like, fucking hell, he's just turned everyone around, beating Pettis. He went for that Michael Johnson being the biggest win in his career to Pettis, and like you said, this submission went absolutely viral. It was everywhere. So it was good for his profile and stuff like that. And then it was Pettis again in 8 weeks for the way the cards played for the semis, and this time I was like, he's going to fight different. Like he's too smart to fight the same way. It's a playoff now, so he can't take major risks. At the same time, you're kind of expect them just to play it safe, just to get to the final, so they can fight for the $1 million. And we had to make adjustments there. Again, Stevie showed how well-rounded he was. The second fight was completely different for the first. He kept Pettis on his heels with his pressure and stuff. He showed him the takedown once or twice. Pettis defended it better. It was a convincing win. So it just set up that final. It's still a bit of a pain in the arse to take that one. Do you know what I mean? Because I was like, we're going to get this world champion. We're going to have a PFL world champion. And if you watch the fight, everyone looked like it was going great for us. Like Stevie got dropped, not dropped, but he got hit with a couple of the leg kicks, but then he started countering them, and then he's obviously took Olivier Dunn, took his back and gave him a bit of scare. And you can actually see, like, you don't see in the camera, but you could feel Olivier was starting to panic a wee bit. Stevie was starting to land on him, and fact that Stevie had took him down, and Stevie was getting a wee bit more confident, but it was still early on in a 5-5s, and he's just made a wee mistake. Like, he's followed him and he's hit him. Olivier's went back and he's followed him, and it looked like Olivier was going to shoot, and Stevie's put his hands out and he's just come out of the top. It's like a fucking lightning bolt, that shot. Olivier's never knocked any person out with one shot. Do you know what I mean? I think he's got one TKO win in his entire record, and he's kept this perfect shot for the biggest fight of his career. Which, if he was landing on anybody else, he would have been like brilliant, but it just happened to land on Stevie, so it's a bit of a fucker. So he's back at work, man. He's in the next season. I think he's fighting in April, so the lightweight tournament starts in April. He's just waiting on a date, whether it's the 1st, the 7th or the 15th. I think they're going to, they'll send us a date. We're speaking to them. We're speaking to them the last couple of days because his contract's getting bumped up, his pay's getting bumped up and stuff because he's run last year and stuff like that, man. So we're speaking to the PFL about that, and a couple of our guys are probably going to end up there as well.
Because that's the thing as well. It must be that must have been a learning experience for you as a coach, because what you're talking about, adapting a game plan, like that's the thing that's so unique about PFL, is there's no other kind of organisation in the world that you go, right, we need to advance, we need this sub, or we need a finish in under 12 minutes. So how was that for you as a coach, just to adapt to the whole kind of league point scoring scenario?
The second fight was easy. See, because we knew we needed a finish, it was like you could let him off the lead a wee bit. You're like, basically, you can't be conservative here at all. You have to go. And Stevie fights well like that. And sometimes that can be detrimental to him because he's been caught like that before. He got caught off with Leo Santos in UFC Sweden like that, where he's just went for him a wee bit and failed there at Glasgow, to be fair. And sometimes you need to rein him in a wee bit. But if he lost that fight, it didn't matter if he lost by stoppage or on points. He was at the playoff position. So it was like a football team when they're losing and they bring their defenders off to put their attackers on. Do you know what I mean? They'll take it to right when the left wing backs up, fire on some fucking attackers. It was like that. You're basically like, just fucking get him. And then I think our plan was like, if we get to the 10-minute mark and none's happening, just drag him into a fight, just hover him, and we'll see what happens. It was a learning experience. The multiple weight cuts, see, in the 4 fights there, the period, it wasn't even, I think it was like the first fight March or April, and it was 8 weeks. Then it was, I think we got 10 weeks actually for the next one because Pettis got extra time. And then, which puts him a different one. So we already knew that Stevie needed to finish because all the other lightweights had fought. Then we got 8 weeks again, and then it was 16 weeks between the semi and the final. So it wasn't like a lot of time, do you know what I mean? It was good having the dates and the opponents set straight away. One of the bigger things was just no elbowing. You're not allowed to elbow, obviously, so taking wee things like that out. But it was a fun format. It was tiring, like mentally and physically tiring for Stevie, and even just for me coaching, watching tape, designing weeks worth of training programs for that one person, and even the sparring partners, like you're having to get guys to replicate Anthony Martinez for a while. Then it was like 2 camps of Pettis, do you know what I mean? And then it's like now we're bringing in judo guys and that for Mercier and stuff like that. So it was challenging, man, but it was an experience, man. I think any of the guys who got all the way through the final will tell you it's not easy. Like, just that one fight after the next, after the next, after the next. And by the time it finished, like, Steve was just in the rest.
You see the thing about elbows as well, like that's something I've always kind of wondered. Is that just to stop athletes from getting like cuts?
Aye, it was to take away the cuts so they could fight again in 8 weeks. Or so they could get back training and stuff like that. They actually thought they might have allowed the elbows in the final, but they just kept it uniform all the way through, which is it's different, man. It was we actually put a video up. I think it was like maybe February last year. It was Stevie hitting pads, and he was elbowing the pads, and Ray Seafood was actually messaged him saying, you're not allowed to elbow, right? We were like, oh fuck. I was like, we knew it, but it was just habit. Like there's certain positions where if you throw a knee, you're going to fall in with an elbow, or if you've got your hands in certain positions in the clinch, or your hand fighting on the ground and stuff like that, it's just drilled into you after a while. That's an elbow space. So we had to obviously get rid of all that.
And that's the thing as well. Like, it completely changes how certain positions can work. Because, but one of the things that pops into my head was when GSP fought Michael Bisping, and Michael Bisping was in he was in full guard, and GSP was in the bottom, but GSP just elbowed the absolute fuck out his head. So let's start like that. Without that, like Michael Bisping would have been able to advance possession. He might have been able to get off his own ground and pound. So it's just so interesting to see how like certain little things like taking away elbows can wholly impact like different games, especially in a jiu-jitsu sense.
It makes for you have to make a wee bit more space for ground and pound, which is a good thing. But you can't lie maybe half guard top chest to chest and drop elbows. Like you need to sit. You can't hit somebody hard with chest to chest with a punch. So you're having to make a wee bit more space, which makes it harder just to even hold people down. Like it's easier to get up on an underhook if somebody's trying to make space to hit you. Then you're getting the thing with close guard that you're saying where, if you remember like Peter Queeley's fight with Pitbull,
Yeah.
like Pitbull's dominating him everywhere, but Queeley's elbowed his head to bits for close guard bottom. So it makes that a wee bit safer because guys that are good at that are those elbows on the fence, like the kind of refer to them as the Travis Brown elbow. Do you know what I mean? It's not like a highly skilled elbow there, but if you put your head in the wrong position and somebody can split you open with that, it changes fights. But it definitely changes the dynamics, man. It's very similar to when you were allowed to like knee to the head and they take away the knees. So now you just have people lying on top of people holding them. Whereas if you're allowed to knee me in the head, I definitely can't let you get to like a north-south position or beat my shoulder line passing side control because I know you can knee me. But then when you make space to knee me, it's also easier for the guy in the bottom to get up. So the dynamics definitely change. The good thing with elbows is you're not really elbowing each other and sparring every night of the week. Do you know what I mean? You'll play them with the more experienced guys, you'll place them in pads and stuff, but it's not like you're taking away something that you drill every single night.
No, absolutely. And like, it's quite interesting that you mention about the knees because that was it was especially a big talking point when Demetrius Johnson first went over to one and he lost against Moraes was when Moraes elbow was kneed him in the head when he was down because that was something that Demetrius Johnson had spent most of his career never having. And like you hear Tim Kennedy talking about it. I think it was the fight he had. I think he had two fights with Jason Miller. I think it was the first one he won because he was able to knee him in the head while they were down. Is it? What's your opinion on that kind of rule? What is that something that you're for, like no knees to a grounded opponent, or do you like the way one do it?
I fought with him once. I fought once at Maryhill actually, where I fought a Lithuanian guy whose name I can't remember, but I stopped him and knees to the head on the ground actually for North South, and it was just after I think it was Kevin Randleman done him in Pride. He called it skyscraper knee, where he pretty much does like a fucking handstand holding North South, so his weight's down on your chest, and he's just dropping these knees on the guy's head. And I remembered this Lithuanian guy shot on me. And I sprawled on him and I just kneed him twice in the head and knocked him out. And at the time, it was pretty cool. But I also I fought in Cage Rage in Dublin. And they had, I think Cage Rage had this weird rule at the time called open guard, where you were allowed to kick the head and you were allowed to stamp on the head if you were a certain distance away from the cage. So one of the problems with these shots is if you get jammed against the cage, you can't defend yourself like if your head's on. So Cage Rage done this thing where if you were a downed opponent, the referee would shout open guard. So if you were like 2 foot away from the fence, I could soccer kick you or stamp on you. So I came in training for that. Paul McVeigh fought in the same show, and they changed the rule a week before. I think Cage Rage were co-promoting with some Brazilian people at the time, but they changed the rule a week before. But they came to film us, and me and McVeigh were jumping there on like a grappling dummy, we were jumping on its head, jumping on its head and kicking it, and then a week later they changed the rules. But I quite like the knees and kicks to the head, but it's very violent, man. I think if you to give me the choice for my students fighting with or with it, I'm probably going to go no. I'll take them away just for the safety of the student. I did enjoy that one time I was allowed to use them. I think if you're teaching maybe self-defence or stuff like that, it's a bit different, but it's obviously trying to keep this thing as close to being a sport as possible, where most people don't even remember back in the day where it wasn't regarded as a sport. Like, I was still part of that generation where people like use it all fucking thugs or nut jobs and off your head. Why I do that? Like, there's no rules, you know. There's actually quite a lot of rules and it's quite safe. So I think the current rule set's probably about as best as it's getting. The only rule I would change, it's not even a pro rule. The 12 to 6 elbow, obviously, I would get that in. It's not as powerful as what people think. The only rule I would change is knees to head and amateur, because you're stacking stuff in the favour of a grappler by not letting a striker knee in the head as you shoot, and then you're also creating bad habits where guys will put their head in that space. Amateur, not worried about getting kneed in the head, and then as soon as you turn pro, they're going to knee your head off. So that's the only rule I don't like. The rest of them are pretty much fine, dude.
Yeah, the 12 to 6 one, that one's a bit fucking bonkers. But I think I heard somewhere that it was because they used to watch, like, do you remember when like Satanta Sports, and like when we went up to the mad obscure sports channels would have like karate demonstrations and stuff on it. I think it was because that's how they used to break boards. It's just
I actually done that when I was a kid. Not so much karate at taekwondo, and you could sneeze on the boards and break them. They're baked. Do you know what I mean? So I think somebody's seen somebody maybe breaking some of them and thought that'll kill somebody, but they don't realise is if you got them flick, the boards will snap. It looks good, but it's a load of shite.
no, absolutely. But one of the kind of bigger stories coming through your gym over the last couple of months has been that you have incorporated Paul Craig into your team. Like, how did that all come about? Like, 'cause, Paul's last fight, he was kind of going without a gym sort of idea. Like, how did that kind of connection happen?
I think he saw the Oostimir fight and then and pretty much just realised that he needed a team, which is legit, especially the level he's competing at. I think he's ranked number 9 in the world there. And there's a couple of things happened where he's been unhappy at the gym he was at. I think he's also been doing. He's been saying as he was doing training with Phil DeFries and stuff like that, and Aspinall and stuff at Andrew Fisher's gym. So he's seen. I think he's seen Andrew Fisher teach and like the way he coaches, and just thought like there must be different outlooks about how guys are coaching compared to how he was getting coached. So he's pretty much just messaging me saying, can I speak to you about this? And then I just done what I normally do. If it's an established pro guy, I'll message him and be like, get me at this time for pads. And I'll take them for 45 minutes and then I can tell straight away if I can work with them or not. It sounds daft, but I can tell more for that than whatever they say to me. Like, some people tell you anything you want to hear. I never do it. But, so I'm like, get me at 10 o'clock on Monday. So straight away he turns up 15 minutes early. And I'm like, all right, this is good. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's a good start. So how it should be. Does everyone asks. He's fully aware of what he's very good at, what needs work, which is the guy's ranked number 9 in the world at light heavyweight. He's a very good martial artist, and he's like, I need help with this. And he just fitted in well. Do you know what I mean? He's just the same as everybody else at our gym. They're hard working. They don't miss sessions. They give back to the team, Like, Paul's already back in training after that fight. He can't say enough good things about Sean and stuff like that. Like, he's mentioned them guys at the UFC and stuff like that. So it basically just like, I need to help with this. I've just signed a new contract. I've signed with a new management company. I don't want to have to worry about where I'm going. I need somebody to just say, 10 o'clock you're here, 6 o'clock you're here, take that day off, do your strength condition that day. This is what we're working on for this week, priorities this week, stuff like that, what a coach should be doing, try to get him better, and just going back to what we were saying earlier, try to make sure he's improving for the winning as well as the mistakes he's making the losing as well, and just no making the same mistakes multiple times, which is, it's like a sign of stupidity or ignorance. So just try to fix wee bits. And he's fitted in well. He's been a very good addition to the team. And it's just strengthened our squad pretty much. Again, like, there's kids coming into the gym for like teen class and stuff like that, and they're like, fucking, there's Paul Craig, like, there's Stevie Ray, there's Danny Henry, there's, like, do you know what I mean? It's one after the other. So it's been good, man. I think that was 13 weeks, I think he was, before the Brazil fight. He was with us. He's definitely made improvements. People have actually messaged me saying you can see the improvements, which was mad because it was also a very quick fight. But we've been fixing stuff like his striking, his balance, keep me seeing the right position moving, wee bits and pieces with his hand positioning and stuff like that. And we'll just continue to chip away and work on that stuff. The first fight came about pretty quick. Like, it would have been ideal if we had a wee bit more than 13 weeks to work. And it was always a dangerous opponent with Johnny Walker as well. Big, explosive, kind of erratic. Not erratic, there's some kind of style and system to what he does, but he's got to do something mental at some point. But we've done the first camp now. He's got 5 fights left, and it's just a case of making sure he's improving until he gets his next opponent, and then we can take it from there.
No, absolutely, and that was the thing as well. Like, he fought Johnny Walker, but see some of the comments like after the fight, it was absolutely ludicrous. Like, Johnny Walker was kind of getting no respect whatsoever because his career's it's kind of ducked and it's kind of dipped as well. But like, it went up and it's went down. But that's the thing about light heavyweight. Like, you're seeing with Jamal Hill, that when you string a couple of wins together, you can get a shot at the title. It's very unique in that sense compared to some of the other divisions where you need to put together 5, 6 long win streaks. But the guys are so big, so good that one mistake in light heavyweight, the ramifications for that is a complete polar opposite. For example, bantamweight, because the shift in power, like, it's a 205 pound. Well, they weigh in at 205 pound. A lot of them are far more than that. Like, the margins for error at that weight division is far less than any other. So it's it's just insane when you hear the comments getting made, like, he needs, like, about Paul Craig, like, he needs to retire, and you're like, why? Like, he's just lost against, like, one of the top 10 best light heavyweights in the world. Like, if that's where you should be retiring, then I think the jig's up for a lot of people. Like, there's so much more that he's still yet to give, and he's got that kind of bonus as well, where he's got a win over the champ. So you maybe put two wins together, and you're fighting for the title against Jamal Hill.
He's got a win over the champ, and he's also got a win over the Ankalev, who fought for the belt. He's also got a win over Krylov, who's in the top 10. So he's got 3 wins over the champ. Probably the next contender at Ankalev if Jerry doesn't come back, and Krylov. So he's got a 5 fight. He's got 5 fights left in his contract. His last fight, he probably get paid more than what he has for the majority of his other fights put together. And he's been with us for like 12 weeks. Like, you're going to see changes in him because he's a hard worker, and like I said, he's smart. And you will see changes because what he's done so far, and it's hard to put this across without being cheeky or disrespectful, but what he's achieved so far in the sport was testament to him. It's no the coaching system he's came through. Like he's got these wins in spite of the way he's been training. He'll tell you this himself. Like he'll tell you this. He's like, I don't know this. I don't know how to do this. I'm not very good at this. But he's still subbing these guys. Like he's pulling guard at light heavyweight and fucking subbing guys against guys that, like you say, it's a once you go past welterweight and middleweight, it's a different sport. We started working with a guy, Big Giovanni, who's like 127 kilos, and see, just getting him ready to compete, it makes you realise that heavyweight MMA is a different sport for the rest of it, and light heavyweight is pretty much the same. It's a completely different thing. And what we're saying earlier about these gyms that train everybody the same, I can't train Paul Craig the same way I train Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray's a lightweight, Paul's a light heavyweight. They're both very good grapplers. Stevie's a southpaw, Paul's an orthodox guy. Paul's like a very natural good kicker. He kicks really well. Stevie's a heavy puncher. Do you know what I mean? So you can't have them in a class doing the same shit. It's pointless. Like, there's a net effect where they'll get better at certain things like that, but they've got time constraints on their career, they guys, and they've got time constraints in between fights. So everyone has to be like tailored. Every single part of their game has to be tailored to the point where I can message them, or you can message them and say, what are you working on this week? And they'll go, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm working on. This is what James has got me working on. This is the direction I'm trying to move my game in. I'm trying to fix this. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just, I think before Paul was going to a Thai boxing class and a jiu-jitsu class, and he was wrestling there, then he was going down south for sparring and then having to, definitely the fight before us, he was having to put it all together, whereas like I can make sure he's got sparring partners in, and again, I'm with him tomorrow morning, and we're going to spend 25 minutes on footwork. We're going to do some light bits and pieces on boxing and spend a bit of time on setting up kicks, and then I'll go straight for him on to Stevie Ray, then I'll go to Mark Ewan, and do you know what I mean? This is before 12 o'clock in the morning. They've already put in more productive work than some of these other fighters are going to do all week just for that one session. But he's going to, he'll do well, man. Like now that he's got like a wee bit more structure, and that loss is hurting. It hurt me, and I've only really been working with him for 12 weeks. It made me like legit upset. So it'll be worse for him, and again, we'll just use that to make sure it doesn't happen again.
But that was the thing as well. Like, although like, obviously the loss did hurt, like, it was the fact that you see him back in training within a week. Like, do you know what I mean? That's a testament to what's being built there, and that's a testament to the faith that he's putting in you. Because it'd be easy for a fighter to go with a team for one fight, like not get the desired outcome of that fight, and throw the toys out of the pram and go and look somewhere else because the grass is always greener. Do you know what I mean? So for him to kind of be back in, let's say the next week, and back on the game plan, it just shows the faith, like both as him as a character, but the faith that he's putting in you and the guys round about him to build him.
A lot of the guys do that thing where they'll fight on a Saturday and they'll come into the gym on the Monday and take a picture saying back in the gym right away, then they'll fuck off. But do you know what I mean? But he was back in the gym Monday, then he was back in the gym Tuesday, then he was back in the gym Wednesday, so he's already straight back in. And again, I wasn't at the fight just because we're about to have babies. With my wife's having twins pretty much any time now, so I was like, I can't go to Brazil in case these babies come. So I sent like Danny with him, but I spoke to Paul pretty much every day on the day of the fight, immediately after the fight, and I was like, hey, let's get back to work. And again, we're on the same page. We'll fix the wee things and we'll get back to work and fix it. Between us and the rest of the guys in the team, we'll move forward for it. But there's big things to come for him, man. He's well liked. Like he's with that Paradigm Management company who are respected and that opens doors for him. He's well liked by the UFC. He's one of the guys people are going to watch him anyway, because you know he's either going to get these submissions that nobody else in that weight class is getting, or he's going to be in a mad fight. so he's kind of must watch TV. He's definitely going to get better. Like what he's very good at already, we'll keep, and we'll just add to it, and we'll try and round off a wee bit more each game.
It's like one of the things as well I've noticed is that he seems to be doing a lot more like interviews and stuff like that as well since signing for Paradigm, and just trying to get the brand out there and trying to like promote the brand because as a professional fighter, that's essentially what you're doing. Like you're trying to promote yourself in the best way possible, and it's like the best way to do that is through these kind of interviews.
It's not for everybody that as well, but he speaks very well, Paul. Do you know what I mean? When you see him in interviews and that, he's very articulate and he speaks a lot of sense, and he's quite an honest guy as well. Do you know what I mean? He'll not be like some of these other guys putting on a front. He's pretty much what you see is what you get with him, I think, in interviews. I don't know how much he enjoys it or stuff like that. I don't have a lot of time to watch every fucking interview and stuff like that. But some guys hate it and some guys favour it, and I think he kind of sits in the middle. But I think as long as you're yourself with the things, you come across well. And for what I've seen him on the Bisping podcast and stuff, and he came across very well there. So I think he's at a point where he's got like a big following and that anyway. I don't know, he's maybe like 15 fights in the UFC now. He's top 10 ranked light heavyweight. He's been on big shows. He opened a main card there again and stuff like that. He's definitely got a platform. But the main thing is just to keep developing as a fighter. Do you know what I mean? Just to keep developing as a martial artist and getting better in between fight to fight.
So James, the last question I'm going to ask you before we wrap it up, and it's quite a broad one, but what direction would you like to see Scottish MMA going, and how would we get there?
It's a weird one that there was a point in time where it would have been good if everyone was unified and everybody was working together and stuff like that. But I think if you're being realistic, that's probably never going to happen. We're quite fortunate where most of the other good pro guys in the country come to our gym and train. Like Aiden's down a fair bit, Paul McBain comes down and stuff like that. So I think we could definitely do more shows. Do you know what I mean? There's a severe lack of shows up here. I think this year you're probably going to get the Budo shows. Some of the shows up here are terrible. Like they're absolute. You'd rather have no shows than a poor one. Do you know what I mean? It sets the sport back. With these mismatches, guys that shouldn't be anywhere near a cage, independent guys out of shape. No, there's no unified rules. Some shows are near in the head, some aren't. Just things like that. Like there'll never be like a government body controlling everything up here. But see if people just had a wee bit of consideration about how they're harming and affecting the sport instead of just trying to make money. Maybe go a wee bit of way to help stuff. I think the majority of the big teams will work together, but there's so many people that they'll not work together with everybody because they're insecure. They're worried that somebody might go to another gym and see something maybe a wee bit better. Do you know what I mean? Or the level there of coaching is different, or something. They're so insecure. Instead of doing something about it by becoming a better coach and providing better for your students, they'll be like, don't go there or start rumours about them. But there's some good amateurs coming through. I would like to see something in place so that there's something for kids under 16. Again, I must got that. I think they've got under 13s, 15s, or is it 16s, whatever, all the way through. It's similar to football. Something like that would be good, and it means you can get kids progressing up through the ranks. We sent Stephen Clancy to the WBC World Youth Games for Muay Thai, and he fought in the under 16s there. So now he can move into the under 18s. He does the same with jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. So if there was something there for MMA, because we had to have Sean Clancy fighting at 16. He's been fighting amateurs, but fighting adults. You know what I mean? He's fighting guys far older and stuff. Whereas if there was unified age categories like cadets and juniors, that'd help. definitely more shows, but what the better shows, like some of the shows down south, like Almighty, it's an excellent show. If that came up and helped out with stuff. And then just even that, if they push into the IMA thing, I think you want to tackle it at grassroots level first, do you know what I mean? And that takes care of what's coming after. The current crop of pros, if you're past maybe the age of 25, it's going to play out how it's going to play out. I think there's some of the younger guys getting experience locally and then moving on to bigger shows before hopefully getting to like UFC and stuff like that. It's like kind of tried and tested path. But I think there definitely needs to be something in place for the amateurs. If it's no the IMA thing, then maybe just somebody with a wee bit more professionalism, with putting on shows consistently. Like On Top's just pulled their next show. It's getting to the stage now where if I get at the gym and I'm like, On Top's putting a show on in April, guys will be like, didn't bother. I don't want to go on that show because they pulled the last 3 shows out of 4. Even though it's the best show up here. Budo's got this show coming up. You've got boxing, K1 and grappling all on the same thing. It'd be better if it was just a 10 fight amateur MMA card, maybe 3 pro fights on it. Do you know what I mean? Just so it's the same thing all night. They tend to do alright, but again, there's only 2 shows a year, and there's not much else up here. Do you know what I mean? It could do with somebody coming up. Even like Art of Combat was decent back in the day. Some of these other shows are just not worth working with, just because, like I said, it sets the sport back. It's like a black mark against the sport more than promoting it. And there is shows like that in England and stuff as well, but England's a bit more fortunate where they've got some good shows down there as well, so you tend to never really hear about the poor ones.
Well, I know it's maybe not the nicest thing you say, but see, like you are talking about, like mismatches and kind of the level of opponents getting put out on shows that your guys won't actually fight on them shows. Do you think that's something that more gyms need to start doing going forward? Because I know, especially in Scotland, we're not blessed with an abundance of MMA shows like you were mentioning about On Top, that like they are Scotland's like, kind of premier MMA promotion, and even they can't seem to get interest. But then when you do it, like, would you rather see these promotions pull rather than let's stack the cards with people? Like, I can't even like people from like the Quarantine Fight Club, like
Yeah.
type of guys where it completely harms the sport, because you like a couple of like last one of Reese McEwen's last pro fight against Jordan Rita, and it's hard like it's no nice to say this, but it's a good thing that Reese is a nice person and decided to take that boy down, because someone less nice could have really injured him, and that's the direction it's going in certain promotions, as someone's going to get seriously hurt. And I know it sounds like you're being a bit dramatic, but it's when you've got punches, kicks to the head, like without adding knees and elbows, someone can get seriously hurt. So what do we do?
Well, if you look at the Irish scene, it took. So the Irish scene used to be very similar to ours here, where it was relatively unregulated, and then there was a death on one of the shows there. A fighter called Pedro Carvalho, the Bellator featherweight, lost to Charlie Ward. I don't know if you know this, but the guy died in the changing room after the fight. You know what I mean? So he's collapsed and died, and it just changed the whole sport. And that this was a good pro fighter. This wasn't like a mismatch. It was a Portuguese guy who came over. He had a winning record and stuff like that, and it shook up all the Irish MMA. Do you know what I mean? The amateurs all have to get medicals there. I think they have to be registered. The matchmaking's better. There's things going on in countries like we've had guys fighting Sweden and stuff like that before, and if you've had so many fights, so when I fought in Sweden, I think I had maybe 15 fights. So when they were like, we're going to match you, they have to match you within a certain number of fights. So somebody with 15 pro fights can't fight somebody with 3 or 5. It had to be like two guys. If you're a first time pro, you have to fight somebody with up to 3 fights, maybe 5. And then, so the matchmaking was all better, do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And unfortunately, it might take something really bad happening in Scotland to for the government to get involved and start regulating shit. Because again, most people don't care about it. They see it as I don't know if it's a money thing or look at me, I'm running a fight show, what a fucking ego thing. But when you're running it with these guys, and again, without mentioning names, but you're bringing in these independent guys who are fighting every week for 50 quid and taking dives, and there's something wrong with these guys. Like, there's something no right with them mentally, where there's easier ways to make money. Drive up to Scotland and take a dive in front of 400 people. It must do something to your psyche, that, because fighters don't like to lose. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing is it's the exact opposite of fighting. People compare it to journeymen in boxing and stuff like that, but journeymen in boxing are legit boxers. They seldomly get knocked out. They're there to bring other boxers on. Do you know what I mean? They're there to go the distance, or they can't fight again next week and stuff like that, and to develop fighters. And what we're getting in MMA is not the same. You're getting certain guys putting on shows, and unfortunately there's teams that are going to go to these rubbish shows. They'll load all their guys onto that rubbish show so they can be like, oh, we were 6-0 tonight, and then you're like, who did you fight? And you're like, independent guy, 0-5 guy, fucking guy with one leg, guy is get fucking a pair of Umbro football shorts on, do you know what I mean? Borrowed gloves. What's the sport in that? Who's developing there? So you can go about saying we were 6-0 last night. We're the best team in some wee shitty town. Well done. Like, it's lack of ambition. Do you know what I mean? Like, when people going on about we want to be the best team in Scotland, and I'm like, you want to be the best team in Scotland? There's fucking like 5 clubs in Scotland. You want to be the best out of 5? So I want to be the best team in the UK or Europe, and then eventually, like, do you know what I mean? Like, show some fucking ambition. You want to be the best looking waitress in McDonald's. That's what you want to be. Like, it's pointless. It's the same with these shows. Like, if you're going to do something, do it right, or just don't do it at all. Match it right. Book a nice venue. If things happen, so be it. But when you mentioned research, Dan, Evolution and Combat, they guys tried their hardest to make that show good. They're brilliant guys, them, and unfortunately, they get fucked. If they never found late replacements for some of their fights, that show they were going to lose serious money and stuff like that, and that isn't by design. But this was guys that were brought in a couple of days' notice, and we've had fights like that. Like Stevie Mop and Coonley's both fought Wes O'Neill. Do you know what I mean? They'll never talk about it, but they've had multiple opponents changed after being matched, and then something's happened on the week, and you're like, we can get you this guy, and I'm like, that's fine. I go, don't you dare fucking celebrate and don't hit him. Like, do you know what I mean? You send them in, take them to something, get out, and that's it. But these are guys matching these guys 6 weeks out, and then making it like it's going to be competitive, and it's just unprofessional, man. It's that how you do it, anything's how you do everything type of thing. But if you're passionate about the sport, you shouldn't be doing that to it.
No, absolutely. And like the point I was when I brought up the Reece McEwen fight, because I know they had a great fight in place. Curtin Kryzan, who fought in Cage Warriors not long ago, like that fight was in place. But the kind of point I was looking to make was that there's no kind of restrictions in place to stop these guys coming in and stop guys fighting at amateur 1 week and then fighting at pro the next week. Like, there's no regulation of who's getting in that cage and who can define themselves as a professional mixed martial artist, because like anyone can do it. Like, you can just walk in off the street and say, I'm a pro MMA fighter. Like, that's the point I was making. Like, that's the point I was looking to make, because it's extremely dangerous.
Aye, it's no like boxing where you need to go in front of the board of control. Do you know what I mean? To get a pro license and stuff like that. And they've actually just implemented rules recently where they were getting guys going pro straight for like maybe kickboxing backgrounds and stuff like that. So they've implemented a rule, the British Boxing Board of Control, where you have to have 5 amateur fights before you can turn pro, like a minimum of 5. And then they'll do things like, if you're a pro boxer and if you lose so many fights in a row, you have to go in front of the board and explain what's been happening. Do you know what I mean? You have, well, this is maybe why I've lost, blah, 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 and then they can revoke your license and stuff like that. So that definitely helps. I think there is wee things like Tapology started taking down records of some of these guys, or if you beat some of these guys, they wouldn't put them on your record. Do you know what I mean? So that's a good thing, because like the record is important. Like if you can get to 7-0 and then you can go to Cage Warriors or the Contender or stuff like that, but nobody's really looking at who have you beat to get there, and they just see the 7-0 and 6 finishes. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if Tapology refused to put these guys on, that 7-0 record's now 3-0, and then people start just, oh, it doesn't look as impressive. So that's definitely a good thing. Hopefully they keep doing that, and it'll discourage some of these guys for going about looking to fight bums. There's even things like you see them with some of these fights, and you're like, there's no way these guys are the same weight. They've no weighed in at the same time, and stuff like that. And there's multiple cases. You've seen that thing on Instagram, OnlyCans, when it was about Thriller, and it was like, it's unfortunately been shut down, but it was entertaining. But the sad reality is, it was the fucking truth. It was the guy was exposing people for taking easy fights, and even full fucking shows and promotions got their off it. But it's a weird business, man. It's why I don't. It's why I don't promote shows anymore, because we used to do them back in the day, and I think I'd done about 36 or something, and then eventually I was just like, this isn't for me anymore.
I seen that OnlyCans they went in quite hard on Cage Steel as well. Well, they were pretty fucking brutal.
Aye, they were. The thing is, most of what they're saying was true. Do you know what I mean? But they unfortunately went after Evolution Combat as well, with the Swedish guy, the Icelandic guy that Sean Clancy beat, the guy that built like a tank. Fought some wee guy. I can't remember. He just about murdered some wee guy. So that's a comparison of what you're saying with Reese, when Reese took Jordan Wheater down and subbed him, whereas this big just up Icelandic guys just punched some wee guy's head off. Do you know what I mean? Like proper killed him. And you're like, holy fuck, it's dangerous, but it might take somebody like that just to put, it might be something like OnlyCans that stops people taking easy fights. So like, we've got guys in the gym and they're like, please don't put me on OnlyCans. Do you know what I mean? Don't put me on OnlyCans. I can't. Hopefully I'm never on OnlyCans and shit like that. But it's a mad sport, man.
And I think when we are going through the kind of COVID point and folk could do home weigh-ins and stuff like that, obviously didn't help it. Because if you weigh yourself on a carpet, you're about fucking 2 stone lighter. And if you weigh yourself on like a hard floor, or like, are the scales calibrated? Like there's so many variables that folk can use. Somebody could put their hand against a wall or on a table and lose a couple of kilos. Like, it's wee things like that are fucking mental. But thankfully we're going by that bit now.
Aye, there's a million ways to cheat that. Sometimes it's not even the same people's feet on the scale. Do you know what I mean? It's like
they get painted toes.
That's fucking his wife's feet on the scales. Aye. What a time.
No, James, thanks very much for your time. It's been hugely appreciated, and
no worries, mate.